And just like if you like get a minute to just like hola. Bueno, vamos a ir empezando. Creo que hay todavía.
Well, let's begin. I think there's some people outside. Objective number 1, people chatting. Okay, we have achieved that. Lots of people are talking in the rooms. And also, please remember that you will have more time to talk, because after Selena's talk, we will have a cocktail at the cafeteria in the basement. So you can keep talking over a glass of wine and some other things to have something to eat. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Selena, if I find her bio. Selena will be talking about the next generation. Selena Deckelmann is the Chief Product and Technology Officer at the Wikimedia Foundation. She brings more than 20 years of experience in open source technology, product management, and engineering leadership. Before joining the Wikimedia Foundation in 2022, Selena was Senior Vice President at Mozilla, where she was responsible for the Firefox browser. She's a Python Foundation Fellow and former major contributor to PostgreSQL, one of the largest free and open source databases in the world. Selena will be speaking in English, so please, if you're going to listen to the interpretation, please get your headsets outside the main room. And please request your headset. Thank you so much, Selena.
Gracias, Evelyn. And I think we should, well, first of all, what a wonderful day today. So I just want to give a round of applause to the organizers who are making this look very easy. But it's, I've been a conference organizer myself, and it's very difficult work. I really appreciate it. Whoop. Okay, so we're at the end. So I'm standing between you and the cocktail hour. So I'm going to try to make this worth your while. First of all, I just want to say again, thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. It's really a privilege and an honor to be able to come and talk to you all here. This is my first time in Uruguay. It's also my first time in South America in my life. So this is a wonderful way to be introduced to your country, to South America, and to GLAM, actually. So yeah, I've had a chance to talk to so many people here already who are really excited to be here and having conversations about GLAM in this place and in this time. And I think it's a really special opportunity to turn our attention to the communities that are here and to bring the many leaders of the Wikimedia movement and the organizations and the projects all together in this space. And I want to also acknowledge that, you know, there's a bunch of my colleagues from the Wikimedia Foundation that are here. They're giving some presentations. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of them that are very relevant to the product and technology work that I focus on here a little bit. But, you know, it's just, again, it's such a treat to be able to see each other in person. And I think that GLAM Wiki itself, it's a vital opportunity to deepen our knowledge, you know, of one another. And speaking from a software perspective, this is just really precious time for me to deepen my understanding of the work that everyone does here, because that's really honestly what I'm most interested in. It is the work that you all do. And with that, you know, once I understand, I think my teams and I, and with their understanding as well, we can build much better software. So this understanding that we share, it's the heart of the Wikimedia projects. And we're really trying to share this perspective that I'm going to share today in lots of different venues. And if you attended WikiCon North America last week, which there are a few of you that I'm seeing again, some of what I'm going to say today is going to sound a little bit familiar. So I'm going to try to use, yes, there we go. Okay. So as many of you know, I started my role at the foundation a little over a year ago in August 2022. And so I wanted to start by sharing a little bit about what this role means to me. And so some of these images that I'm going to share, they're mostly from Commons, and this one is of a field that I played in as a child in California. And so much of, what I learned about sharing knowledge were these experiences in public spaces that I had as a child. This is actually my photo. This is me watering some dirt. So I grew up in Montana, which is in the western half of the United States, but I also grew up on the road. And my stepfather, he was part of a pipe fitter welders union, and so we traveled and followed the work. And we traveled so much, honestly, that the spaces that stand out, they're really the shared spaces, not really what I might have called my home. I really especially loved the shared space in the public library in downtown Kalispell, Montana. So this is a photo of it. It really just I look at it, it's not that exciting of a building, but it really just reminds me of just some wonderful time that I spent there. I truly looked forward to it, and I went there almost every day after school because both of my parents, they worked, and so they'd pick me up, a little after 5. And I was really lucky to have a wonderful children's librarian there, and they spent so much time with me. They recommended books based on what I liked. They started talking to me about school, explaining how libraries worked. They found all the books by this author, Roald Dahl, that I loved, including some in the adult section. They showed me the card catalog, explained the Dewey Decimal System. He showed me the Oxford English Dictionary, actually, that was on this little lectern in the children's section. I don't know why, but it was there. And that I don't know, it just stuck with me. It made such an impression that later on I would tell people when I was in college that I really wanted to own, an OED, that was that was my biggest aspiration. And I have this photo. This is the only non-free photo that I have in this deck. It's of the Hockaday Gallery, which was across the street. And this was also a big part of my life because close friends and my favorite violin teacher, she used to share her weaving there. And there was just this lovely artist community that I was part of. And I want to note that we noted in Wikidata that this needs an image. So if anybody watching this later wants to figure this out, I'd love the help. So I just want to say it makes me incredibly proud that Wikipedia and Wikimedia projects, they contribute to the sharing of knowledge, and that we play such a special role in people's lives in the same way that the Kalispell Library played that role in mine. And what our projects have accomplished, it's the creation of a public space that's meant for everyone to experience the joy that comes from learning. And like this image, there's so much work left to be done, and I love that. And in addition to that same space, it makes it possible to share knowledge on a scope and scale that's just new and unprecedented. We also work together, of course, to protect those public spaces, and we stand against censorship everywhere. And I think it's really incredible that we get to do all of those things as the result of contributions from hundreds of thousands of volunteers every month. And I think that there is a vital relationship between the work of the Wikimedia movement and the cultural heritage institutions that many of you here in this room represent. There are several parallels in our work. We work to expand access to knowledge, information, and culture to as many people as possible. And GLAM institutions, they preserve cultural heritage and memory, and they shape how we create, revise, safeguard, and rebuild knowledge and culture. We protect the privacy and confidentiality of the people that we serve. Wikipedia sees over 15 billion visits a month from people all over the world, yet we collect very little information about those people. And I know within the GLAM space, libraries, they follow a similar principle to protect the privacy and confidentiality of their patrons. We also fight against censorship in all of its forms. Libraries are frequent targets of censorship, especially now with book bans happening all over the world. There was a volunteer-organized Every Book Its Reader campaign launched last year, in part in response to book bans that were occurring in the United States. And I'm really proud of this as something that the foundation fights against on behalf of our volunteers. We also create public shared spaces for people to gather in person and online. And GLAM institutions, they play a key role in those community spaces as gathering points and gathering people with the shared purpose of preserving cultural heritage. And so does Wikipedia as part of a digital public square. And this last piece about shared public spaces has become an especially important one to me, a space that exists to support anyone and everyone that comes through its doors, physical or digital, without asking for anything in return. It's increasingly and painfully rare. And in my experience, the public library remains one of the few examples of cost-free community support in towns and cities lucky enough to have them. In an ever-shifting online world, just on the online space, this place, it's Wikipedia. So that's one of the main reasons why I took this role, that whole story. And the other reason, frankly, is because of all of you and the global community that you represent. Prior to this role, I spent about a decade working on Firefox, meeting individual user needs, and partnering with large and small institutions to ensure that the web remained open, freely available, respectful of individual privacy, and just continued to function as a global public resource. And I've seen firsthand how powerful it can be when volunteers, they really come together to build something out in the open. And the whole open web system that emerged, it happened thanks to contributions of millions of volunteers, as well as businesses, governments, non-governmental organizations who all felt that the open web was worth participating in. And I started my time at the foundation just over a year ago with a listening tour. And I was lucky enough to speak to so many people, some of whom are in this room, who helped me understand not only the day-to-day challenges that are faced by volunteers, but also to hear like the big ideas, projects that are just starting out, hopes for the future, questions and roadblocks that you might face in your work, and the ways that they might be solved. And during my listening tour, I met with many individuals whose primary focus, was on Commons and some of the other projects that we've talked about here, Wikisource and many others. I was also fortunate to connect with JJ Dearborn. I don't know if she's here right now. I think she actually had to, oh, there she is. Hi, JJ. About the Biodiversity Heritage Library Project. And, we discussed many of the opportunities ahead of us if we view the Wikimedia projects as interconnected, supportive ecosystems, and all of us get together and pursue some big, audacious goal, like influencing public policy worldwide to address the climate emergency. She has a vision about this that really inspires me, and it presents a challenge and a question that I wanted to talk about while I'm here at GLAM Wiki. And that question is, what are the ways that we can use what already exists to support inclusion of biodiversity heritage knowledge into our projects? I think this is one of the, I don't know, I just feel very strongly that this is one of the ways that we can really use our projects right now to do something that would truly impact the next few years. So, I have other questions. And the conversations I've had over the past year, there are questions about our future, the future of Wikipedia and the Wikimedia projects, and also the future of our movement, and honestly, the foundation. And this is about what we need collectively to meet that future. In a recent conversation that I had with Audrey Tang, who is Taiwan's first digital minister, she compared Wikipedia to fire. And what she said was, Wikipedia is the one place on the internet that has taken potentially destructive debate, harnessed it, and turned it into energy that fuels truth and understanding among people. I couldn't believe it when she said it. I just, I was like, wow, that was really good. You know, when she described this harnessing fire, she was describing it as something that humans have done since the beginning of time, since the beginning of time for humans anyway. And along with it, you need all of the things that can make fire safer. You need fireplaces, you need fire extinguishers, and you need fire departments, even as you're using it to do something good and useful. And like in Audrey's mind, she described it, Wikipedia as this safe space for debate and a system that helps transform and unite divided people. And I want to say, I know that that's not everybody's experience of Wikipedia, but I wanted to share that vision because I think that when people have such strong ideas like that, I think it's hope, right? Like it's hope for the future, and it's a way of looking at what's been created from a perspective that we need. So I just wanted to share that, and I was very inspired by it. So I think harnessing the fire of passionate debate online, it's what Wikipedians do. And I think they do it to produce trustworthy articles, but with every strength comes a challenge. And Wikipedia in particular faces generational challenges that are triggered by generative AI, stagnation in the growth of our most experienced editors, and increasing regulation and censorship threats. I think, however, GLAMs have a different strength. And you know, I was really excited to be able to come here to pose this question because I want to get your help in answering what I think is an existential question for the Wikimedia projects. So GLAMs, I think your strength is longevity. And I think it is the ability to take an extremely long view of collective work, not just into the past and our shared goals for preservation, but also quite far into the future. And that is strength that the Wikimedia movement needs right now. So I think it's a unique time for us all, and I'm going to kind of go into like a few things about that. I wanted to look at time though. Okay, so we have a little bit of time. I'm gonna go through some things that I've been thinking about. I want to leave some time for questions, but yeah, I'm gonna just go through this kind of quickly. So first of all, I think there's really a potential sea change in the internet, and it's driven by generative AI. I think just a quite shocking breadth of the world has been impacted by the changes of the last like couple years, and the artificial intelligence companies, they're competing just very aggressively, and I think it's a real challenge to us right now. I also think there's increasing regulation and censorship threats that face Wikipedia, and there were some panelists like earlier this morning, first thing that were just mentioning a few of those things, and other people here know about that, but I think that that's a real issue. I also know that we are seeing a decline in a vital group of Wikipedians. There are admins, and their work is crucial to how content is produced and maintained over the long term. This is also true of Commons. It's true of, honestly, like most of the projects. I don't have great data on every single project, so if you know more about the volunteer experience and the editors on the projects you participate in, I'd love to hear more and the things that you look at and are concerned about. But I know for sure on English Wikipedia that there is a problem, and I came with receipts. There was a report from Signpost last month that said we hit a new record low going back over a decade of 448 active admins. And to find the last time that English Wikipedia had fewer than 449 active admins, we had to go back to 2005. In an earlier report from the Signpost in August, so this has kind of been a theme lately, a thing that people are looking at, it said that 99% of our admins made their first edits over 4.5 years ago, and over 90% of our current admins made their first edit before I wrote my first article about this over 13 years ago, end quote. That wasn't me. This is somebody else writing this article. So we do see similar issues, like I said, across the Wikimedia movement. The people who are doing the vital curation work, that battle misinformation and vandalism, and they defend high-quality standards, they struggle under a heavy volunteer workload. And this came up in just the last panel, actually, as well. So, like I said, I don't have good measurements for all projects. I do have them here, and I think it's really an important issue that we have to address as soon as possible. I also think that GLAM institutions are facing some long-standing threats, which is the destruction of precious artifacts from natural and human-made disasters, from climate change, and also war. In September 2018, I'm really sad to remind folks here of this, but Brazil's National Museum, it caught fire, and an estimated 90% of 20 million artifacts stored there were destroyed. And that, to me, it makes the case why the digitization work is so crucial to what we're all trying to do together. In the context of climate change, the loss and damage of cultural heritage is already happening. According to a 2022 study published in Nature Climate Change, there's 56 sites in Africa that are at risk from a 1 in 100-year coastal extreme event, including iconic ruins of Tipasia in Algeria and the northern Sinai archaeological site zone in Egypt. By 2050, the number of exposed sites is projected to more than triple. And as you know, there's two wars that directly affect people in my life, in my communities, in Ukraine and Gaza. And there's just a number of things that have been damaged and are at risk right now. We are in uncertain times, and the preservation of cultural heritage is understandably, it's not the highest priority for people in these regions in times of war and disaster. So, with this challenge in front of us, what will we do? I think one option is to maybe change nothing. And maybe Wikimedia projects, they become a one-generation wonder. And it is wonderful. I mean, it's truly amazing and impactful what we've accomplished to date. It's incredible. Or I think we have an opportunity that we could all figure out what we need to do to ensure that our projects survive the sea changes that are coming our way. So I know that there's a lot of history, in particular of how, somebody said that every big change that's coming is predicted to be the imminent death of Wikipedia. And over 2 decades later, it's just not come true. That said, I think I'm trying to make the case to you, there are many things happening right now all at the same time. And I think especially when a number of our most dedicated volunteers seems to be shrinking, not growing, we're just in a situation where I believe we must address this. So that's got me thinking about what kinds of projects and organizations really stand the test of time. And my view is that most of them don't, but GLAMs, they really do. So I think it's really hard to think beyond a single generation, but I think we have to just start doing that right now. And ask what changes will be needed to make sure that the Wikimedia projects can last past this generation. So, how do we do this? How do we ensure that this project is multi-generational? As I've said before, in letters that I've written to communities and things that I've said publicly, I think it begins with sustainability. How can we ensure that this remarkable project that's been around for nearly 23 years continues to grow and stay relevant? Everyone in this room knows how generative AI seem to affect every part of our lives. Our data and the systems that produce it, they form the backbone for every single commercial large language model. And I fundamentally believe that that makes our work more valuable, not less, more relevant, not less. But how can we all help ensure that human-powered knowledge creation remains a priority for the world? I think this is a vitally important question. And in addition, the world, it's shifting away from purely web-based platforms for searching the internet with services to services like TikTok. And this is a powerful change in the way people find knowledge. And there was just actually a thing I saw today, Microsoft was announcing something about, its AI system was going to be how everyone accesses knowledge from here on out. So I think things are changing quite rapidly, and they changed this morning, honestly. So are we prepared to meet the world's changing needs for how people find information, and in the way that we've met other big technological and social shifts over the past 2 decades? So I think in addition to sustainability, we have to determine what appropriate support looks like. How can we, me, as the foundation, best support volunteers who do the work of producing more knowledge? And how do the volunteers and the movement as a whole, how do they come together to address the sustainability and support issues? And just like the reason why we do this is to ensure that the world's heritage is present and visible online. So thanks to the work of the many people in this room, we've already seen significant successes in how we create a knowledge as a service platform together to deliver more knowledge to more people. 35 national libraries around the world that included Egypt, Israel, Korea, US, and the Vatican, they've all linked their authority control data with Wikidata. The London Science Museum even described Wikidata as a Rosetta Stone that can be used to unlock new connections between people, institutions, and objects. And the National Library of Wales, it recently launched the Semantic Name Authority Repository, which is a bilingual linked database of authority records and related data for people and places. And whether a user is looking for a graph of Welsh estates or a near exhaustive lineage of people with the surname Jones, the National Library's archives are now easily searchable in both English and Welsh. I got the Lucy to laugh, I think. Okay. Then there's also the Rhizome Art Base. It's an organization that archives digital art and conducts digital art preservation. And they said that only Wikibase was flexible enough to describe the ever-changing field of art. Wikibase also allows researchers to formulate complex data queries via an accessible graphical user interface. And this functionality, it inspired Wikimedia Taiwan's collaboration with the Independent Art Space in Taiwan just last year. Sorry. So that's all good stuff. That's great. Since coming to the foundation, I've had a lot of conversations about the role of the foundation. And I'll borrow a phrase from our CEO, Mariana Esconder, who is asking us to examine what roles and responsibilities are best and for who. And I want to bring more clarity to that definition when it comes to the product and technology work, which is the department that I oversee, so that we're just very clear on our work and how we can support you. And the Wikimedia Foundation, it overall focuses on making the work of volunteers easier and scalable across hundreds of languages and locations. And that scalability, that ability to be scalable, is what GLAMs rely on. And frankly, just like be totally direct with you all, I really don't believe that the tools that are out there today are scalable. That's what many of you in the audience have told me, and I agree. So I believe that inviting GLAMs into the global movement that Wikipedia started, more than 20 years ago, is the right thing to do. But for us all to do that well, I need more help from you all. I can't tackle every technical issue that everyone wants to see resolved all at once, but I am proud of the progress we have been able to make in the last year with a little bit of focus on some of the issues that you've raised. So I want to just take a moment to connect some dots, as we've all been chatting today. But I want to talk a little bit about the product work and the people that you could talk to this weekend that are doing it. So this year, we prioritized working on Commons workflows, and the team identified that there was a lot of volunteer load on editors who do curation activities, and so they're building them some better tools. Cormac, raise your hand, Cormac. Hello. He's an engineer on that team. And so if you'd like to hear more about that work and understand how that got prioritized, why we're doing it, you can talk to him. Some of you also may be familiar with the computer-aided tagging tool. Anyone? Okay. So Yeah, so anyway, Cormac's did a bunch of research and work to turn that tool off. And if you'd like to talk to him a little more about that and the work that he did and the team did, you're welcome to do that as well. He offered that. I asked before I said that. Okay. So we also did work recently to encourage editors to use machine learning to help give people better image descriptions on mobile. And Jasmine is here to present along with Fiona and I think Angie, but I don't know where they all are, sorry. There we go. Oh, hands up. Yes, thank you. Great. Perfect. And Jasmine also brought prototype apps on her devices. So if you want to check out other work that she's doing, there's like some cool stuff there. And she also has cards so that you can download the prototype yourself and like play with it and have a look at it and give us feedback. The prototype that she's using for the image suggestions, I believe it's on Indonesia. It's connected to Indonesia Wikipedia. Is that right? Oh, it's Spanish Portuguese. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so anyway, I was wrong. So talk to Jasmine, not me. There's like another project, sorry. Yeah, but it's cool. So yeah, you should check that out. All right, and then we also prioritize the creation of commons metrics this year, improving the commons metrics this year. And Virginia here, yay, and Fiona, they're going to be presenting about this, I think, tomorrow. Jasmine's also presenting tomorrow. So there you go. Okay, so there's some dots. And there's other folks here. And if there's any other questions that are on your mind about product and technology work, you just come to me and I'll connect you with whoever you need to be connected with. So please, yeah, please come talk to us. We are 100% interruptible. Okay, there we go. That's why we came. Yeah, I just consider all of this like being here, talking with you. This is all part of our work to like prioritize the right things, get important work done, and do that now and into the future. So that's all great, right? We're doing that now. But how are we going to maintain that, over the long term? Just getting back to this question that I have about, getting beyond a single generation partnership. We're almost done, and then we're going to go to questions. Let's see, we're doing great on time. We're going to get you to the happy hour exactly on time, I think. Okay, so getting ready for action here and later. So I pose all these questions, and the reason why I'm posing them is because I think it's really important for our communities to work together to answer them. So they just really are not questions for me to answer alone, and they're here for us to answer together. And I just want to repeat something. I don't know how many of you go to the foundation website and read the mission. Well, I'm going to read it for you because I find it very inspiring. It's to empower and engage people around the world to collect and develop educational content under a free license or in the public domain, and to disseminate it effectively and globally. And I believe that we can't succeed in that mission without being on the same page. And I think that this starts with us seeking answers together about these big questions, about sustainability, about support, about the human relationships and the connections that enable our work. And in its first 20 years, Wikipedia was built by individual people making individual contributions, small and large, every day. And then Wikipedia grew, and simultaneously a community of individuals, it became a movement. So one of the pre-conference convenings, it focused on human rights and the effect of climate change on all the world's people, and especially in the LATAM region. And I believe something that we all can do is consider what the tools we have already built have to offer the world. And one of my dreams for our collective work is that we seize those opportunities now, like the opportunity presented by JJ in her vision for additions to Wikidata, Wikisource, and the other projects that would lead to better surfacing and utilization of observations of species and incidence data that better describes the reduction in species diversity that we're experiencing now and have been experiencing for some time. I think with this kind of information globally available, advocates and policymakers worldwide would be better equipped to make informed decisions and be persuaded by data more than, from maybe 100 years of record keeping rather than just the last 20 or 30 years of what's available online. And this kind of work, it's not a huge technical challenge in my opinion. It's a challenge because it's just a lot of work. and it requires a lot of coordination. And I'd love to talk and learn with anyone here that's interested in helping figure out the path forward. I also wanted to say, last night at dinner, there were a group of leaders that were talking about what they thought was needed to advance our movement in the years ahead. And they said something very simple. They said, you know, just identify one or two things and commit to doing the work together, and then do it. And I just thought that was very wise. Honestly, it's very simple and very wise. And I think this kind of thinking will be what helps us all look toward the future. So if you can find a way to commit to each other in an action that we can take together here, I think that would be very powerful. And in 6, 12 months from now, you'll see us moving important work forward. And that's all to say, going back to Audrey's metaphor about fire, a fire, it doesn't immediately begin as an inferno, at least not usually anyway. Instead, it's stoked by many, many people over time with care and passion and dedication now and always. We are responsible for the future of this mission and for what this project becomes. And I'm really glad to have the opportunity to stand here today and pose some of these big questions. And it's really an invitation to work on finding the answers to all of these questions together. So, I'll just close with this one question that I hope I can get answers to from everyone here. What do we all need to do to make the Wikimedia projects multi-generational in their scope? We have some examples where projects and institutions can persist in time, like universities or beautiful building. I don't know, downstairs was so beautiful. Anyway, and libraries, for example. But Wikipedia is different. So what parts can we emulate, and what are the things that we might need to invent? So both Mariana and I, we started our time at the foundation by taking a listening tour where each of us got to meet so many of you. And I deeply valued that time that I got to spend speaking with you about your plans, your hopes for the movement, the roadblocks you met in your work. And as Mariana recently shared, we're about to go on another listening tour, similar to that first one. So I just want to say, let's talk here. And also, please, schedule time with me. Encourage others that you know in the movement to schedule time with me. I really want to hear from you all about what you're working on. And the same goes for my other colleagues at the foundation. There's many of us that are participating in this. And I just really want to see what problems we can solve together. So with that, I just want to say thank you for inviting me here, and I'm happy to take questions.
Preguntas.
Questions.
En español.
So you can ask in Spanish. Thank you.
People are like, I'm ready for cocktails.
Y hay que hacerle un agradecimiento especial.
We need to especially thank this school for authorizing this cocktail thing, because usually people cannot drink alcohol in the premises. So thank you again.
Thank you. It looks delicious. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the next generation is in the global south and doesn't speak English as their first language and is not using the internet in the way that Wikimedia assumes, and all of these things you've talked about in different points. I'm wondering, what promising opportunities do you see for the future generation to be inspired by what we already have and what we could build? What are you noticing as the inspiring things?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's two things that I think about when you ask that question. As far as the things that inspire me, I really think I really think that like the video production that happens among the youth is like wild. Like it's so amazing. It's like, it's startling, you know, it's like hard to watch sometimes because like I come from a different generation, but just like sitting through like TikTok videos, like my favorite, I just tell you, my favorite TikTok person is Eel Guy. I don't know if anybody here knows Eel Guy. No, no one does, sorry. Well, anyway, it's a guy that has a lot of eels, and and he just takes videos. He's a naturalist. And he's super goofy, and he goes out and he, anyway, he's got this like giant aquarium that he built in a underground cistern, and then he just like, you know, is constantly talking about his joy in like working with these animals and learning about them, and it's like, it's a beautiful thing. It's really amazing. And there's all kinds of things like that, and what I found about the experience, because I'm more like a Wikipedian than I am like a TikToker. So it was hard to like really like make myself feel like I was a native in that environment. But what I found is it was like very sneakily educating me about a lot of like eel facts and other things. I just found myself sharing it like it was contagious, you know, in like a very positive, like not like icky, addictive way. Like it was fun. And every time I tell people about Eel Guy, they think it's hilarious, and they like want me to tell them eel facts, and that's great for me because like I'm not very fun at parties. So anyway, so like that's I just think there's so many things like that where people are creating really interesting content online where they'll take Wikipedia articles actually and then narrate them in a form like a platform like TikTok, and like it's very engaging, it's super interesting, kids love it, they use it for their schoolwork, and then sometimes they end up going to Wikipedia, not always, but it's like an interesting new form, and I think that is great actually. I don't really know how to engage with it directly because Wikipedia was built for the web. TikTok is not the web. So I think that's like our challenge is like, what is the platform really like of the future? Is it platforms? You know, so are we going to engage with lots of different platforms? And then how does that scale? I don't know. So I think there's in there a very juicy technical problem of like how to make that kind of thing scale, because I don't know. I don't know that anybody's ever figured it out. There's a social problem, you know, and a volunteer problem. Like, how do we make that something that's exciting for volunteers to do? I don't know. So yeah, so that I guess like for me, what's inspiring often are like unsolvable problems. I think that that's awesome, and I'm not scared by it at all, even though, you know, some of the facts around it can be hard. So yeah, so that's what's exciting to me right now. I really think that there is an audience for the type of encyclopedic content that we like to create in our movement, but it's like in a completely different platform, being kind of understood and remixed and recreated by people that are not really like the people that are creating the encyclopedic entries. So I'm not sure that we would have envisioned that, you know, 20 plus years ago, but it's cool that it's happening now. But it is hard. I don't know how to solve that problem, and so that's something we're all going to just like have to figure out together.
Hello.
Hello.
There's a really good project that came out of the Long Now Foundation in San Francisco, where the boss there, Alexander Rose, started a fantastic study of old businesses, old organizations, and he's trying to understand what sort of factors contribute to their long-term survival. And actually, you know, so he sort of found this hotel somewhere in Japan that's like 1,300 years old.
Amazing.
You know? Yeah, amazing. But I think one of the things that he's discovering is that scale is actually very dangerous to longevity. And, you know, if you look at Wikipedia and just, I don't know what the graph looks like, but I'm sure it's up and to the right, just, you know, participation, articles, media, everything.
Yeah.
But if you contrast that with, you know, the idea that this system is actually still just a baby, you know, 20 years old in internet time sounds like a long time, but if you imagine it as a baby, I wondered if you'd be willing to speculate a little live on stage about how you might see this gigantic system maturing. You know, what sort of elements of how it operates now do you think can settle or age well?
Yeah, I mean, I have ideas, right? I wonder, I really think that there are a lot of people in this room that have ideas about that, and you've been talking about them, actually. You've been telling me about that. I don't know if anybody wants to, like, put their hand up right now, but many of you have told me what you think we should be doing. And I don't know if anybody wants to put up a hand right now and be brave and say it. Sylvia's smiling, but I don't think she'll do it. No. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the ideas that I've heard from you all, one of them is short-form content. That's like a big one. Another one is, could we just like start serving video? There's a lot of challenges with that. Another one is focusing on just the language preservation part of our mission, and really leaning into recording languages that are in danger of disappearing. And we have the infrastructure to probably store this. There's some other problems with it. We don't really have the volunteer base to maintain it, but you know, it's an interesting place to go. So I think that people have lots of incredible ideas, actually, of what to do with this infrastructure. And like, for me, you know, what brought me here was what Wikipedia means to the world right now. And so I'm having to also, because like this problem that like I didn't come to the foundation with this question in my mind. This is like over the last year, as I've been like thinking and trying to like imagine what I'm going to do with our products, this question, it just bubbled up, and I was like, oh my God, I got to answer this question before I can figure out what the next thing to do will be. But what brought me here was how impactful Wikipedia has been, what an important source of truth it has become for the world. And so like in this moment, like even in the next like 5 years, I think that's a really important thing. Like I think we need Wikipedia in particular. We need lots of other things. I think that Commons is like an incredible thing. I think that I believe in the work to preserve heritage, and I believe in our role in supporting that. And I also believe that we still have a lot of important work left to do in helping volunteers like shape what trustworthy content is on the web. So with that, because I haven't really answered this question yet, I can't tell you like what I think it's going to be yet. And I think it's important that I not decide right now, because I actually don't think it's ultimately going to be my personal decision about this. That's just like not how this movement works. I don't know if any of you've noticed. So like, you know, I think it's like, hey, I got to throw this question out to the universe and see what people think. What are the things that you want to build with me, with your friends, with your colleagues here? Like, what is it that you want to do? And I think that's like what's going to power this forward. What do we want to do together? Like that's really the thing. Because like doing it alone, like that's like boring, first of all, and kind of dumb and won't survive. And like this whole system that we have, it's about us like working together on something. So that's what I think. It's like whatever we all decide we want to work on together, that'll be the thing that happens. And I don't know what it is yet.
I would like actually to share a thought, not really a question.
Love it.
About what do we all need. I think what we need most is flexibility and being open to all the options, because the Wikipedia of the future doesn't belong to us, but to a generation that had not yet come, that is growing now, and that is radically transforming and changing from what we know now. For example, we grew up with a lot of reading, the importance of written text, but now we see that the younger generation is completely taken their information from audiovisual content. So for me, I think that maybe in 50 years, not just in 20 years, Wikipedia might experience a complete shift in its format, and text will maybe disappear and it will become completely audiovisual. And I think that as Wikimedians, we should not feel that we own Wikipedia and that it should remain as we know it. We should be just open to whatever will be coming in the future.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I should have asked your name so that I can call on you in the future and say there's one brave person in this audience.
That's Ima.
All right, awesome.
So obviously there is this big question of how we make Wikipedia and Wikimedia multi-generational, but and when we think of it now as like 20 years, we're imagining it's sort of still at the very dawn of its existence. But in the scope of the internet, Wikimedia and Wikipedia are already fairly sort of, fairly old as internet projects go. There aren't that many sites that started when Wikipedia started that are still around. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what has enabled them to survive as long as they currently have, and what those limitations are that might prevent them extending much further into the future.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's such a great question, and so I'm going to give I'm just going to give you like a tiny piece of the answer of what I think about this. Like, I'm not really a student of Wikipedia in all of its like life cycle, and there are people actually that really do study it, and they are much smarter than I am about this. They know way more about it. But there was a really interesting piece, a piece of research that was just published about the change of the editors and policies around editors, and how the editors came together and decided to focus on like verifiable facts. And so there was just this moment where there was a lot more like every different kind of like non-verified fact was being like put into the encyclopedia before we had like many editorial policies basically that would cause someone to go in and update. And there was just this moment where people decided, well, actually people are really looking at this thing a lot more than they were before, and there's some things on here that just are frankly not true. So what can we as an editor community do to change that, to fight misinformation? Because if we allow the platform to be used this way to publish misinformation, and as big as the website's getting, that could be very bad. And so they came together and they decided to set up a series of policies that put friction in the system. And you can see, as I'm describing this, why like over time this strength could become like something that turns like other people who want to add other kinds of content that maybe are not, misinformation might turn into a problem. But anyway, this huge strength emerged of them being able to say, if the content that you're adding doesn't have like good sources, then like we're gonna remove it. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it changed from a place where there was lots and lots of misinformation that was like easy to find to a place that had lots of really well-sourced information for breaking events, for the big important topics. There's still, again, don't want to discount the number of problems that there are with the content, the knowledge gaps, the missing information. There's still a lot of that. But the trustworthiness that we see today is because this group of volunteers came together and decided that this is how they were going to work together, and this was the kind of world that they wanted Wikipedia to be. So I think that's like a tiny piece of it. But that's what I think about, is that like people coming together and making a system that has an outcome, and then really focusing on that together and finding a way to do that. And on Wikipedia, that are it's these policies that are agreed to that became the culture. I think that's basically what I see today as why it's lasted as long as it has, with its very funny MediaWiki skins, and that we just changed like not too long ago. It still looks like kind of an old website, but yeah, I think it has a very advanced sense of a type of editorial community.
Bueno, yo voy a abusar que tengo el micrófono y voy a hacer una pregunta a Jonathan. Pero al principio mencionabas el tema de...
Sorry. At the beginning you were mentioning the issue that admins are growing older and that they made the first edition maybe a long time ago, etc. And something that we have experimented and that we have seen, and there have been articles in newspapers even, at least in the US, about the fact that the process for obtaining any type of administrative permission in Wikipedia is tedious, if not aggressive or bureaucratic or even toxic. I mean, especially against women and minorities, etc. So there is a tension, obviously, between that community that says it is completely overwhelmed with the volunteer tasks, and then how new generations are received. Even the GLAM institutions, as a colleague here in the Museum of Grapes and Wine, about his own contributions on the topic. So I don't know if the foundation has any plans. I understand that the ethics code or the code of conduct is part of this plan, but it's very difficult to balance that tension. And so my question is whether you have any reflections about that.
Sorry, I'm just processing. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of reflections. You know, I participated in a lot of open source communities, not as deeply with Wikipedia, although my account is 13 years old, but I was not a deep participant in editing communities during that time. I was just kind of a very casual user. So my experience with code of conduct and, you know, online communities comes from open source communities like Postgres, like Linux, which has its own whole set of problems, Python. Yeah, so I went through the time period when we decided collectively that we should have code of conducts for all of these online communities. And it was not fun. I just want to, yeah, let's like be honest. And what I found was, you know, anyway, I'll just say it wasn't fun, and it took a long time, you know, and so that's maybe not what everybody wants to hear, but that was my experience. And I've had other experiences working, and what I mean by that is like going from the point where a community doesn't have a code of conduct to the point where that code of conduct is fully implemented and embodied, and people believe it, and things happen the way that you might expect according to what was written down, you know, essentially on a sheet of paper, on a wiki page, like whatever it is. But it takes a long time. And, you know, I'll tell you that what I believe about these types of changes is that they take a long time, but they are very worth it. And in my experience, you know, I've worked, you know, in those open source communities. I've worked in companies where I try to implement changes to, particularly on gender, but in other, you know, diversity, like dimensions of diversity as well. And on gender, you know, I spent 8 years at Mozilla working on trying to get more women hired into the company. And when I started, there was something like, you know, it's sad, it's a very small percentage. And by the time I left, you know, we were in the double digits. It was more than 10%. We got into the 20s, approaching 30% of the workforce that was in my group were women. And, you know, we're basically going from effectively zero to that. And I'll just tell you, it took 8 years. So, sorry, it's like so depressing, like to talk about these facts. I just like want to be real with you though, because these things are hard. Like, they're so hard, and I wish it moved faster, and I think there's ways. I think we've learned, you know, like the things that were happening in like 2002 or 2005 or whatever with Code of Conduct, they're a lot smoother now, you know. I think that the pace at which this work happened in the Wikimedia movement, it just, as far as the part that I could see, it happened quite quickly compared to what I've seen in other communities. But it doesn't change overnight, you know, and it takes all of us. You know, there's just recently an RFC talking about making the English Wikipedia village pump, like that the Code of Conduct and civil communication would be enforced there. And I really appreciate that conversation happened, that, you know, there was still some debate about whether it should be enforced, but that, like, the debate wasn't really about whether it should be enforced, it was something else, I won't go into it, but anyway, but in the end, they were like, okay, this is like what we should do, and we should encourage the people that are here to be civil, and we should act as a community to enforce some better norms. And I think, I don't know, I mean, it's not fast. I wish it were faster, you know, but I think in the end, it will be worth it to have gone through this process, like, as a group. So that's what I'm committed to, is just like going through that process with the communities, and I engage, I get on there and chat with people, and for the most part, I would say, like, people are like exceedingly nice, actually, like, especially for what people say. But there are times where I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I just, like, to me, I'm committed to the process of evolving the community, because I think it's possible. I think it's possible for it to change. The request, oh yeah, I'm sorry, request for comments. So it's a system on, most of the wikis for soliciting input on important questions that, like, the editors are debating. Yeah, thank you. And probably, I don't want to keep people, yes, please, I just, Evelyn can...
Bueno, antes que nada, una disculpa a todos por retrasar el tema del...
Sorry that I'm getting the cocktail late, but I have a few years living in Baja California in Mexico. When I lived there, I learned about the language that is about to disappear, that is called Quiliwa, and there are just 2 living speakers left. And when I learned about this, I thought that using a Wikimedia project, we may be able to rescue that language, which is about to disappear when those 2 speakers died. So I was evaluating how to rescue it, and I thought that it might be using the Wiktionary to do that. And then I learned that one of the reasons why this language was about to disappear is because for this culture, they don't use writing. They don't believe in writing, so only oral transmission. So I felt a bit discouraged, but I thought that it might be a good alternative if we could record the voices, the audios of these people, that they themselves could transmit it. But I started thinking, but how does it work for that? And so I thought it would be a very good idea to do an implementation concerning a voice editor that may be edited based on speech, and it could produce written articles, so the reading assistants and can help people who are impaired, visually impaired or blind, and they would bring more newer generation, because generations work with voice mainly. They communicate through audio, so I think that a tool like that may help a lot, both the people who are far removed from, not in contact with Wikipedia, and other generations that would feel more attracted to editing voice elements. And so I thought that a similar tool to Wikipedia could be added. I don't know if that would be viable.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I've actually, I've had like some similar conversation. Monica and I were like talking about this kind of a thing last night, and she mentioned that Common Voice was like a surprising new addition. It's a project from Mozilla that collects samples of language and then tries to turn it into a usable database that can, be used like you would use Siri, right, to form new words, things like that. In your case, I'm not sure that, I actually don't know if it could support a language that has no written component at all, but it's an interesting thing to look at. As far as, Wikipedia itself, I think we could support something like that. I think the challenge, there's some challenges, but I think just thinking about it the same way that you think about that the community honestly is thinking about ChatGPT and other assistive technologies. I think any place where there can be an assistive technology that helps people write, I think those are opportunities. And then at the end of the day, what happens is, for the way that we're storing things, it just has to be put in some sort of textual form, at the end of the day. So I think as far as an assistive technology, it totally makes sense. Whether we would convert to only storing voice, I don't know. That's that's a chasm I need to leap across. But I think starting with assistive technologies is really good, and then finding ways to store that, as we're using the assistive technology is really interesting. And then partnering with things like Common Voice, I think is just a really valuable way to preserve content in a way that's going to make it get used. That I think is the path, and I would say iteration is what you would need to do to figure out whether that was a viable long-term path. Yeah, it's a great idea though. Thank you. I think, yeah.
Yeah, we don't. No tenemos más tiempo para preguntas.
We don't have any more time for questions, but Selena will be here tomorrow and Saturday, so if anybody has a question directly, you can go see her and exchange ideas. And thank you very much, Selena, for your keynote speech. And now we will receive you in the canteen so we can share more time.
And the person that lost an orange, this is your moment to come and pick it up.